Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 130. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for tuning in on this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing?
Happy Tuesday to you. What was your Madden rating?
Hopefully better than Cameron Canaday. Poor Cameron Canaday gets lumped in with the tight ends the way Madden does. He's like a 37 overall. Poor dude. But one other quick side note, dude. Aside from Madden ratings, I just want to say I went to the mall this weekend and was in this bookstore because it's a mall and there's like 3 stores left, and picked up Chuck Noll's book, His Life's Work, which was really good. Not an biography written by Michael McCambridge, but pretty good. If you haven't checked it out, I recommend it.
Yeah, that's a great book. I've owned that for quite a while. Read it, I think, a few times already. And the biggest surprise there is they still have bookstores in malls.
I know. I was honestly shocked. Yeah.
How far did you have to go? What all was in that mall?
Like 3 stores. It was a comic book store, a bookstore, and like a JCPenney's. So my choice was pretty clear.
Oh Lord, boy! You know, when I was your age, malls were the thing. You know, used to go cruise around the mall on a Friday and Saturday night, and just literally just drive circles around and around the mall until we could find something to get in trouble with, which usually happened. But yeah, those things are things of the past. Now, have you found any good deals on Amazon Prime?
Yeah, I didn't want to use Amazon. I don't have an Amazon Prime account, and I didn't want to spend a bunch of money, so I didn't participate. But did you do the Prime Day stuff?
No, I told my wife. I don't know if she found any deals on or whatnot, but boy, Amazon Prime accounts are fantastic because of the 2-day free shipping on that and all. So, and the way UPS comes to our house between QVC and Amazon, we have to have those extra little perks. But I didn't see anything that I couldn't live without yesterday myself.
Well, Dave, let's jump into the news here, and obviously it's pretty quiet. It's about to pick up. I mean, we're shortly here. We're talking training camp and getting in the nitty-gritty, but the NFL reportedly, I think this was first reported by the Wall Street Journal, then passed along by Pro Football Talk, and I have a take on this, but let me just get the facts out first. As the NFL is reportedly going to propose for the new CBA to the NFLPA of an 18-game season with a 16-game player limit, obviously meaning the players cannot play more than 16 games, meaning everyone has to sit out at least 2, and you have to have the strategy there. I would tab this under the idea of terrible ideas, but what say you?
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I've had better suggestions from my grandfather as a kid when it came to checking to see if a fuse was dead. I mean, literally, that has to be. I mean, it's so stupid. I can't believe it's actually being thought of as a real proposal. To be honest with you, I mean, you want to talk about killing your fantasy football crowd on top of it.
Right.
You know, just unbelievable. I mean, and then I heard that, well, then you can make concessions for quarterbacks. Well, you think a quarterback wants to, go ahead and expect to pay a quarterback even more than you're already paying them if you're going to expect them to play 18 games. And then, of course, long snappers, you might as well pay them. I'm sure they're going to be thrilled about having to play 18-game schedules. And then and kickers, I mean, where do you draw the line at, I can't imagine how that ever passing, A, and B, I mean, I can't even believe it's actually something the league is going to propose to the NFLPA. So stupid.
Yeah, and players like Cam Heyward, Ramon Foster. Foster is one of the union reps for the team, came out against it, which is no surprise, universally panned by everybody. My thought is that this was intentional, though, that the NFL knows that there's no way this will ever gain any traction, but it's their way to try to take an extreme position to compromise to the just 18-game schedule that's kind of been talked about for a while, where you'd have 2 bye weeks, players can play in every single game, expanded rosters and all that. So I kind of feel like this is a gamesmanship by the league to have an idea that's so terrible that them going to just a regular 18-game schedule seems reasonable, and that's my guess of why they leaked and floated this terrible idea.
I mean, I don't see anything. I mean, you're going to extremely have to increase their pay if you do get to an 18-game schedule. I mean, for starters, and I just can't see. I mean, look, I mean, I can see doing the 2 bye. You know what? If I'm the players anyway on just a 16-game schedule right now, I'm pushing for 2 bye weeks.
Sure.
That's something I'm bargaining hard for in this next CBA, and that's not even on an 18-game schedule. That's just on a 16-game schedule. So, I think, if they want the extra game, it's gonna or 2, it's gonna have to come in the playoffs, I think. And certain guys, I think, like Ramon Foster, are still proponents of having the 4 preseason games, now whether or not that's going to stick around, we'll see. But man, where I sit right now and thinking about where the players are on all this and what all the players have, haven't done a good job of at bargaining for in the past, I just can't see how an 18-game schedule is going to fly. I just don't.
Are you more in favor of an 18-game schedule or expanding the playoffs to maybe 8 teams?
I'm in favor of leaving it the hell alone.
Okay, yeah, amen to that. But if you had to choose one that you had to pick, which one? What's the lesser of 2 evils here?
I'd much rather see an extra playoff game or 2.
Yeah, I think I would too.
I mean, I hate to see. Look, I mean, would this result in every year, an 8-18 getting in the playoffs? I mean, it could. I mean,
probably
7-9 or 7-19. Yeah, it could. But I mean, what are the chances of those teams making it all the way anyway? I suppose. I mean, would you highly reward the number 1 seed? I suppose. Should a number one seed be highly rewarded? Yeah, I think so. But I mean, the only thing I can really see happening, or that I want to see happening, is an extra playoff game or 2.
Yeah, but I know the NFL is going to push hard for an 18-game schedule. It's obviously what they want. It's the best thing for business, which I understand, but it's not good for really anything else, I don't think.
I mean, you get later in the season as it is now. I mean, teams are already looking ahead by, I don't know, week 10, week 11? I mean, teams are mathematically, for all practical purposes, out of it. I mean, this isn't like baseball, where you play 162 games and all. I mean, I think you're just going to water down the back end of your schedule even more, or you run the risk of that. I mean, are you going to get into a situation where teams actually have a chance to sit their stars the final 2 weeks of the season? I mean, I think all those things need to be taken into account here.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a player safety issue, too, with a veteran guy that's 35 years old trying to play 18 games. That's going to be extremely tough. And then the rookies, too. You go from the college game where someone's maybe playing 10, 11 games in college, and then that rookie year they got to play 18 and then preseason. Even if you cut 2 of the preseason, you're still playing 20 games. I mean, yeah, there's a real player safety issue, and that's what makes the idea of, having an exception to the NFL's 18, 16 game, player limit, but quarterbacks can play all 18, and that would be silly, because how could you argue player safety with a player limit, but then exclude the quarterbacks from that and say, player safety doesn't matter that much for you guys? I mean, it would just be ridiculous.
Do you think the players, and I don't think fully guaranteed contracts are going to happen, but I mean, if the NFL did push for an 18-game season with no stipulations of maximum 16 games or anything like that by one single player, do you think the NFLPA would trade off for that on fully guaranteed contracts?
Oh, if it came to that, that'd be interesting. It would take a lot. The union would have to be blown away by some sort of concession. So that could be one thing. I don't think the NFL is going to go for that, because you're also increasing players' pay. If you're going to go to an 18-game schedule, at least you should. With the revenue sharing, I mean, you got to do it some way. That might do it, but it would take a lot for the union, I think, to agree to that.
Just make the media outlets pay for it. Continue to jack them up and make them pay the high price. And do little things like open up. Look, in addition to Game Pass, I mean, surely they have all these games archived, right? Going back, I don't know how long they probably have them archived, but I bet that NFL Films place, I would like to spend, drop me off for a week there and come back and pick up what's left of me,
Yeah.
They ought to make these things where they're available for purchase. Even if it's a one-time watch or download type thing, $20 a game or something like that. I would make my wife work an extra job or two.
Alex, your salary is $1 next year.
To support that habit. I'm sure you would. I can't get enough of it, Alex. I mean, I know you're the same way. I mean, a few of these games will show up on YouTube or whatnot, but all that does is make you want more. And, especially some of those games that, and trust me, I have a huge collection. But there's some games that I wish I had in the 70s and early 80s and all like that. That I'm missing from my collection that I would like to be able to, especially during the off season, go back in time and watch. There's got to be a pretty good selection of fans, across the country willing to pay for that. And there ought to be other ways. I think through licensing and stuff like that, the league can make even more money. But we'll see. Once again, I'm not holding. Not hold my breath when it comes to them being able to work out an extension before the current CBA ends. And I've said it time and time again, I expect this thing to be kind of lengthy once it does happen. But I don't think that latest proposal is going to fly at all.
Agreed. I know the initial reports about the NFL and the union coming together and trying to hammer out a deal are encouraging, and that gives me a little bit of promise and hope and optimism. But I think that the initial talks of a deal and actually getting a deal done are two very different things, and this thing's not going to get done until either when the clock strikes midnight or after midnight. As Andrew Brandt says, deadlines spur action.
Right, deadlines do, but the owners have deep pockets here.
And that's why the union's trying to have players save up money now, so they have some deeper pockets than they had last time. That might give them more staying power and leverage to fight for this thing longer than what happened last year.
Good luck with that.
Last CBA. Yeah. All right, Dave, let's turn this back to the Steelers. You had an article yesterday, and I assume you're going to do the defense today or tomorrow or soon. But you had an article with your 3 offensive sleepers, under the radar players. You can go through the list and we can talk about it, but who were those 3?
Yeah, I only wanted to pick 3 because 3 on the offensive side of the ball was tough enough to come up with, because quite honestly, it looks like this offense, barring any injuries, it's going to be tough, to crack this roster right now. But I wanted to pick 3 players too that weren't draft picks, 3 players that are really kind of under the radar, 3 players that most people probably aren't going to give any chance at all of making a 53-man roster, yet those 3 players could potentially land, on the practice squad. So there's a fine line there, and yes, I will be doing the defensive players, I think, today. But starting first and foremost, Fred Johnson. I think that's more of an easier one here. Some people say, well, people have talked about him this offseason. Well, we haven't really had, since him actually being signed as an undrafted free agent, we really haven't had that much talk about him. Yeah, there were bits and pieces during the offseason practices and all. But I went back again yesterday and watched a little bit of his college tape. And in fact, there's a great cut-up of his stuff at Florida on the Patriots website from pre-draft. Some of those videos on there. And is this the next Ramon Foster? I think that's the question that we start with, and I know that's a little bit strong, but I think Foster and Fred Johnson share, a few similarities here. Johnson early on in his career at Florida, I think played a little bit at right tackle. He's a big kid at 6'7" and 1/8, 326 pounds. He had to kick inside to he eventually found a home there at right guard. Are you okay? Did you fall out
No, did you hear that? So I was getting a bottle of water. It squeaked around. Sorry about that.
You're not drowning, are you?
Nope, all good.
But a big kid, 6'7" and 1/8, 326 pounds, and like I said, found a permanent home at right guard. The way he kind of moves, especially on the move when he pulls, kind of reminds you of Ramon Foster. And, he's not the most athletic specimen in the world, But there's some good technique I thought in there as far as run blocking and attacking the double teams in the inside zone stuff, understanding the bubble and that kind of thing. And on the move, it's not pretty sometimes, but he's effective on the pull as well too. And the thing, look, I mean, he received the second highest signing bonus, I think, of this year's undrafted free agents. He's going to be a guy, obviously, that's going to get time at right guard during training camp and the preseason. But, will he get any time at left guard? Is it too early for that? Probably. I mean, you probably want to see, can he play some right guard at the NFL level and maybe even some right tackle, although the Steelers are loaded with kind of tackles right now, so not really expecting that. But I think this is a guy that, one little injury on an interior position there between now and the start of the regular season, we can see Fred Johnson on the 53.
And even without an injury, there's probably still a path if you're going to keep 9, right? If you have your 5, your Finney and the loser between Fowler and Okorafor, that's 7, potentially 2 spots left. I think he could even get it without an injury.
It's possible. It's possible. I mean,
it's possible they keep 9. They keep 8 or 9 each year, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible for sure.
Yeah. No, I think the Foster comp is good. I mean, 2 big guys with some tackle guard versatility. I think probably better guards than they are tackles. We'll see if he plays left guard. We'll see if he plays right tackle. I mean, obviously, he's going to have to be versatile and move around. He might play all 3 for all we know. But like I said this before, whenever the Steelers had their list of UDFAs first announced right after April's draft, I said the biggest name out there is Fred Johnson, and I think he can definitely be a sleeper.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be a guy that we're gonna track quite a bit from your training camp reports on into the preseason there. The second one is another guy that got a little bit of run, especially at one point during the offseason practices. I'm of course talking about Deontay Spencer, the wide receiver out of the CFL there, McNeese State product, I think.
Ottawa Red Blacks, I think he was in the CFL. He bounced around a little.
He bounced around with several teams. The funny thing about him, I went back and actually totaled him up there from 2016 to 2018. He registered over 3,100 receiving yards on 258 receptions in the CFL, and I think there's only 1 or 2 players that had more of each than him in that span. So, I mean, we're talking about a league-leading receiver here in Deontay Spencer coming out of the CFL. Now, he had 13 receiving touchdowns, I believe, and registered 23 total plays that gained at least 30 yards. So not just 20 yards, 23 plays that gained at least 30 yards. And obviously also an accomplished punt and kickoff returner the last 3 seasons in the CFL. He averaged 11.5 yards per punt return from 2016 to 2018 and 22.6 yards per kickoff return. 2 of those punt returns returned for touchdowns. Make no mistake about it, this guy and between him and Ryan Switzer, probably a competition to see who the shortest one is on the team. I haven't got a good look at them side by side. Probably it might be Spencer there, but make no mistake about it. Spencer's going to have to impress. He's probably going to have to take, if he's going to take anybody's roster spot, it's probably Switzer's, right?
Yeah, it could be him. It could be Eli's. I mean, it just really depends. But he's got to just earn that spot himself. He'll do it in the return game. I think he can make some big splash plays. I think he's capable of that. And he'll have to learn to play in the NFL with a little smaller field and obviously a bump in competition. He was in the NFL briefly several years ago when he first came out of McNeese State. I think he was in camp with the Rams for just that summer. But, yeah, I mean, he's a guy that earned a lot of buzz in the spring from a lot of players. And recent history tells us that the players that earn buzz in the spring, especially from teammates that they don't always go up against. I remember Ramon Foster talking about, who's just number 40. It turned out to be Mike Hilton. Same story with Terrence Garvin talking about Eli Rogers. So when there's some buzz in the spring, sometimes it ends up working out in the summer. So he's an interesting guy with some experience, probably knows how to be professional, and I think is going to at least make 1 or 2 big plays in the preseason.
And if he does, he's going to have to make several as a receiver as well. Yep. I think, but I mean, he's able to work out of the slot. I don't know how much time, if any, he's going to get at the Z with his, due to his size and all like that. But I mean, if you're going to go in multiple, we talked about it several times already. If you're going to use 4 and 5 wide receiver sets, this upcoming season, if you want a guy that out of the slot can get down the field and make some big plays down the field, he did that in the CFL. Now, if there's one knock on Ryan Switzer, and I've done a lot of thinking about this the last couple of days, and it's probably dangerous. I wanted to warn you about that ahead of time. And we've talked a little bit about this throughout the offseason when it comes to Switzer. I mean, at one point late last season, he did kind of stretch the field a little bit. But when, we talked about his average depth of target and his average depth of reception last year, it's not great. Obviously, his return totals weren't great. Now, that's not all on him. We're not pointing the finger all on him. But and I hate to go down this rabbit hole, but I think this is a perfect spot to do this, Alex. What does Ryan Switzer have that makes you married to him, or makes anybody married to him right now?
Ability to return kicks and punts, both. That's pretty big. I don't know if that necessarily means that I'm married to him, but that's the biggest. That's his biggest selling point right now.
All right. Do you have him as bet your house he'll make the 53-man roster right now?
No, I wrote an article yesterday saying he's inside looking out. He's got the inside track, but he's not guaranteed.
Yeah, I'm with you on that as well too, and I think too many people might have him as a lock. I'm not
Really?
saying that he won't make it, but. And I'm afraid his confidence might be. I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with being confident, but I don't think he's as big of a slam dunk as maybe many people envision him being. And I think it's mostly related to he's an average returner, right? I mean,
no, I would say he's a good returner. I think he got put on a bad return team last year that hurts his numbers. I think you look what he did in North Carolina and Dallas his rookie year, the numbers were solid. He averaged 25 yards a kick his rookie year.
Well, you can put anybody on an average return team, right?
Oh,
you get what I'm saying here.
I think he's a good returner. I think he got put on a team that's really done poorly in the return game last year and got traded last second, so it was hard to really catch that move and train. I thought on punts he did fine. I think he's a good return guy when you watch him specifically, but I just think he's on a bad return unit.
And on the offensive side of football, where are you at with him? I mean, he is what he is. I mean, I know it's easy to circle those 8 plays or whatever it was from later in the season once he got kind of more adjusted to the offense. But he's not a guy that's going to burn you really over the top. He's not a guy that's going to give you too many catches during the season, more than 7 yards down the field. He's not a big yak guy to date either.
Sure. I mean, I largely agree. What I will say is that it was nice, as you referenced, to see him really kind of have his role expanded as an actual true and blue receiver last year, because the first half of the year he was just playing de facto running back. I wrote an article saying he was basically Le'Veon Bell 2.0, where he was just catching screens, so even had a couple carries, or RPO game, quick game, that kind of thing. And when they actually got him in the offense and used the more vertical, you saw some bigger plays from, I think it's the Denver game or the Jacksonville game, one of the two. He made some big plays. He's got really good toughness over the middle and some fearlessness to his game. So I don't want to say that. I think he's basically at a ceiling, but maybe just his usage of being a receiver could be improved, and that'll help his numbers.
Rank Eli Rogers and Ryan Switzer, overall players.
Overall, everything?
Everything.
I mean, I think Eli's still the slightly better receiver. I think Switzer offers you more as a team, though, so I'll go Switzer over Eli.
Boy, it's been so long since we've seen really. I mean, we saw him a little bit late last year, and they obviously, as soon as he got back, they put him. We saw the 5 wide receivers sets.
He can separate really well.
He really can. Well. And we've talked about forever since he arrived. That he's a better than average route runner.
Yeah, for sure.
Now here's one thing with Switzer is, boy, short area. If you need that 3 yards on that quick, 3 yard out, he can get it for you.
I think Eli has definitely hit his ceiling. I don't see there much being more for him to get other than just being another year removed from his torn ACL. But I don't think we're going to ever get more than what he had, say, his rookie year, where I think he had 45 catches for whatever it was, 600 yards.
And neither one of Switzer and Eli are big yak guys, or never have been. But I think Eli Rogers can get down the field a little bit deeper for you. More consistently. All right, as we come back up from this rabbit hole, I guess my point is, what's the gap between Spencer and that? Assuming they keep 6 in total, what is the gap? Is it closer than maybe what people think?
Not yet. It could be, but obviously when you have Switzer and Eli, two guys that are known commodities in the NFL, Spencer's really going to have to, be able to work against that and say that, we'd rather keep Spencer, a guy that hasn't played in the NFL before, on game days over a Switzer or Eli, someone that we know, how they perform on Sundays. And so that'll be a challenge in itself. But is it impossible for Spencer to make it? No, he certainly can. If he creates those splash plays, takes care of the football, and can show a little bit as a receiver.
Yeah, if he can pop 1 or 2 during the preseason as a returner, and get downfield on out of the slot on a couple of plays as a wide receiver, there's going to be a lot of buzz about him. Look, I'm not saying he's going to make it. Well, once again, to me, these are guys that are kind of under the radar that everybody expects not to make it. But, if there's ever been a possibility of there being a next Stephon Logan, I think it's Deontay Spencer.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll have a good camp and a good preseason. And your third one was a little more interesting, Dave. I don't know if you were just kind of struggling to come up with a name, but who was your third one?
Kind of yes and yes, but the more that, look, we kind of joked when Trevor Wood was initially signed, him having that long snapper tag next to, I don't even know why they tagged him on that.
Well, I guess he is an emergency line. I think he has done it before.
Yeah, but he don't need to be worrying about that right now.
Yeah, he won't do snaps unless Canada would ever get hurt.
Right, and even so, I think maybe potentially Vance McDonald, I don't know, would maybe slide into that role first. But regardless, I probably surprised a lot of people by putting Trevor Wood on this list. But to be honest with you, and I found some time a couple of weeks ago to go back through some of last year's Texas A&M film of his and take a little bit deeper dive. Quite honestly, he might be the best blocking tight end the Steelers have after Vance McDonald and Xavier Grimble. And I know that's not a tall task, but I think I believe it to be the truth. And once again, this is a guy that wasn't used a lot in the passing game, a guy that transferred out of Arizona because he wasn't used enough, and he goes to a place in Texas A&M and still has to play second fiddle. Mostly used in two tight end schemes there, but I thought I hate to say that to characterize his blocking is not awful. It definitely needs some refinement, but once again, I found it to be potentially the best of anybody not named McDonald and Grimble. Now, obviously, this team is hopeful that Zach Gentry, can potentially be that number 3. But what if he's not? And what if you're unable to immediately go out there and get a tight end off the street that meets what you're looking for there? You got a guy in Wood too that played some limited time on special teams in college as well too. Look, this is the extreme long shot of these 3 I listed here, but I think you want to talk about a guy that needs maybe a little bit more attention than he's been getting so far this offseason, and heck, he could be the first guy off the roster, for all we know. But I think he's a guy worth paying attention to, especially at the start of training camp.
Sure, fair enough. You've seen him more than I have. I only kind of know his background. Obviously, I'll get eyes on him in camp, but it's just such a tough transition for these tight ends. And I've seen so many tight ends that have come in with a little bit of intrigue before, and it's hard to get reps. It's hard to get chemistry. It's hard to get involved. But the tight end depth is weak. So if there's somebody looking to make a move, whether that's him, whether that's Kevin Rader or Christian Scotland Williamson, I think there is an opportunity there.
Yeah, I think some people said, in the comments, what about add Webb in the mix? Yeah, I think Webb could be another one.
Who's that? Ralph Webb?
Yeah, Ralph Webb.
Okay.
Could potentially be a guy.
Yeah, one of the running backs. One of these big backs has to play like a big back, right? Whether that's him or Trayvon McMillan or Malik Williams or Trey Edmonds. Somebody's got to step up and show some power, and that's probably going to create some intrigue.
Yeah, and obviously those guys, like everybody on this list, you're going to need some help, I think,
Yeah.
But of those, of those three players, Fred Johnson, Deontay Spencer, and Trevor Wood, are they pretty much ranked in the order of their chances of making a 53?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe you could go Spencer above Johnson, but it just depends. How about I would throw another name out there really briefly, sticking with receivers. Johnny Holton keeps intriguing me, Dave, because this is a guy that feels like new DHB speed and best special teams value. I mean, it's nice to have that guy do something different than the entire rest of the receiver group, where you have a big guy that can cover kicks and punts, and really no other receiver is going to be able to do that. And so I think just being able to differentiate yourself from the rest of the group is going to help his chances.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to keep a number 6 too, yeah, he definitely is going to have to be a guy that's a core guy for you on special teams.
But I mean, there's no other receiver on this depth chart aside from Tevin Jones and Trey Griffey probably aren't going to make it that can run down kicks and punts, right?
Sure. I mean, he's it. And he does have enough speed. I mean, you go back and look at the big plays that he made with the Raiders. He is a one-trick pony, I think, pretty much when it comes to the offensive side of football. But, I mean, he is a guy, if you did put out there in 4 or 5 wide receiver sets and say, okay, you're the Coke bottle top, you go deep, he could be that guy. I still would rank him behind Deontay Spencer as far as chances go, but, I mean, I see your angle there. I mean, especially if you had a guy like, I mean, make no mistake about it, DHB did not play much other than victory formations and special teams.
Yeah. I mean, it's just because your depth chart gets kind of redundant if you're keeping Eli and Switzer. You already have Deontay Johnson, Deontay Spencer in the mix. They're all different, obviously, in their own ways, but just overall, their archetype, they're pretty similar guys. And Holton breaks that mold as the big, long stride, vertical threat. Not going to win a whole lot underneath, but also can play special teams. And I think just being different is going to help separate yourself and stand out.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's one of the things that we've talked about several times between Switzer and Eli. Are those two guys too much of the same thing, to warrant keeping both? I mean, I know that's the easy pick right now, and heck, if I were to draw up a 53-man roster right now, both those guys would probably be on it. But you can make good arguments of why do you need two of the same thing,
Yeah, I do think they're keeping 6 receivers, though. I mean, who that 6 is going to be a tougher question, but with all the depth they have, hard to not see them keeping keeping 6.
All right. Like I said, I'll have my defense up, and we'll talk about that on Friday.
All right, cool. Dave, let's transition to somewhat the media is talking about the Steelers, kind of, previewing this team, and a lot of attention is being brought to, obviously, this team being drama-free, hopefully, knock on wood at least, and how that's going to impact this team. And both Merril, Hoge and Louis Riddick both have spoken really positively and said that that's going to help the team a lot and actually make them a better team, even minus not having, AB and Le'Veon Bell.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I meant to research this, but wasn't Riddick on the circus making some circus comments late last season?
Circus? Oh, about the Steelers were a circus?
Yeah. Was Riddick one of the – I can't remember, if Riddick was one of them saying this is a circus and all like that. I'll have to research if he was one of the ones claiming that this is a circus. Now all of a sudden he's on the other side saying it's addition by subtraction here. Now I suppose on this topic we should go back to what Merril Hoge said at a golf tournament last week. And look, this isn't surprising. A former Steeler, a guy that's good friends with Ben Roethlisberger. But I believe Merril Hoge. I mean, even if Merril Hoge wasn't a former Steeler, I would believe this coming out of his mouth and his analysis stemming from that. He, in so many words, he thinks this Steelers team 2019 team has a better chance than the one from last year. He says, I think the key word here is team. Team wins championships. He told PennLive.com, quarterbacks don't win championships, defenses don't, and offenses don't. They have to have a lot of weapons there, and they feel more like a team now. I like their odds better this year than I did last year. Look, we'll see. But, I mean, now all of a sudden it seems like the last few weeks the rolling narrative has been this addition by subtraction. And when you look at what Riddick said Monday morning during an appearance on ESPN, and make no mistake about it, I love Louis Riddick. I think you do as well, too. I think for the most part, him and guys like Bowen and who else? Dan Orlovsky. I mean, ESPN has some good talent. I think. I don't think a lot of these guys get caught up in just a hot take angle here. But here's what Riddick said Monday morning. I definitely am a believer in addition by subtraction. I'm a big believer in chemistry. I'm a big believer in unity, brotherhood, and having a healthy culture within the locker room. And look, Mike, meaning Mike Tomlin, and look, Mike's never just going to come out and say, yeah, the wheels had come off and I lost control of my football team. That would serve him. That wouldn't serve him any good individually, and it wouldn't serve their franchise any good collectively. But I think there's no doubt that there seems to be a renewed sense of togetherness, a renewed sense of we're trying to get after this division, this conference overall, and we're trying to make a run at this Super Bowl, and we believe we still have the parts in place that we can do that. He goes on to say, Riddick comes off as really bullish on this team. He says Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be a bona fide number one. James Washington will step up. He will be a quality number two. I'm not so sure he's going to be number two, but I mean, we get what him and Reggie Wayne are trying to sell when it comes to James Washington. He goes on to say, keep an eye on Deontay Johnson, a third-round pick out of Toledo. I think he was the best route runner in this draft. But that's a pretty strong statement right there. Then he goes on to be bullish on the defensive side of football. He says, and then on the defensive side, as I've said, pound for pound, Devin Bush Jr. was the best player in this draft, regardless of position, offense, or defense. He ends this by saying, so they are loaded for bear. That's a phrase you don't hear very often these days. They are loaded for bear. I like that phrase. I think this team is healthy from a mental standpoint. I would agree with him there. They feel like a lot of the distractions are on the outside, although as Mike Tomlin says, you can't control the narrative on the outside, but you can be professional on the inside. I like that quote as well, too. I think this team will come out and exude that kind of professionalism, and I expect Pittsburgh to easily have a double-digit win season and make the playoffs and be a force to be reckoned with in January.
Yeah, it all sounds good. There's going to be aspects of this team much improved. This defense can be better. But just overall, the idea from Hoge and Riddick saying that this team's going to be better without AB and Bell, but more so AB because Bell wasn't with the team last year, it's just a hard sell for me. Is there a benefit to not having that drama? Sure. And in that regard, things will be better. But are they going to be a better team overall without Antonio Brown? Even knowing that, I'm sorry, that's just not true. I mean, the idea that they're going to be better off without AB specifically is I just think incorrect.
Him saying they're going to win 10 games easily, I'd sign up for that right now.
Yeah, it's hard to find anything easy about this schedule
or
this division.
Double-digit win season. So, I mean, that could obviously be 10 or
10.
more.
Yeah, it's at least 10.
Yeah. I'd sign off on that right now because 10 wins for the Steelers in 2019 would have them in the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, and potentially the AFC North. But it's going to be tough sledding, like I said. I mean, the schedule's tough, and this division's tough. I mean, and that makes me nervous.
Is this the hot narrative right now? The addition by subtraction?
Yeah, I mean, I think that'll be a story that comes up, but it's all ultimately going to be determined by how well the season goes. This team plays well, that's going to be the narrative. If they don't play well, then it's going to be, the subtraction by subtraction.
Okay, what else do we have? Anything else to add on those major media comments?
No, but I mean, it is nice to hear, at least the Steelers, we talked about national media in non-dumpster fire terms, the way that they were when this whole saga went down. So at least there's that.
Look, a year ago we were talking about the deadline for Le'Veon Bell passing. Just less than 6 months ago, as Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell were out the door taking shots at Ben Roethlisberger. The drama, really, I mean, you want to talk about kind of a drama-free summer. we've had it here, and that's been nice to see. Boy, James Conner, in his recent kind of media tour that he had, which I wrote a little bit more about what he had to say Monday night, in an interview that just surfaced on SI Now, and some of the positive things. It all seems really kumbaya right now, and that's good to see ahead of the start of training camp. And like I mentioned in that training camp preview post that I wrote that we discussed on that last show, it'd be nice to just see this team show up at Latrobe with no grand entrances, just going about their business for once, and keep there from being any stories written that don't need to be written.
Yep, keep the focus on football, and let's do that with our next topic, Dave. You and I both written about this, about Ben's work in the red zone, and then some of the receiver screens and short game stuff to kind of put the passing game into context. But let's start with the end zone article that you wrote the other day about Ben.
Yeah, and this is a guy that probably not surprising with the amount of total passing attempts that he had last season, right? But I mean, when you look at last season as a whole, Roethlisberger, and this stat comes courtesy of Pro Football Focus, led the league in throws targeted into the end zone with 50. Now, our charting up by the great Matthew Marksey has that number actually a little bit higher. Sometimes, there's a little bit of a differential as far as how far the ball travels past the line of scrimmage. No two charters throughout a complete season, I think, are going to be exactly on the number on that. So don't get caught up on them having 50 and us having 54. But, I think, that aggressiveness aside, and look, these are passes regardless. These are not necessarily plays that took place in the end zone. These are plays that anywhere on the field, the ball flew into the end zone on the pass attempt. So make sure to get that out there. But when you look at the overall the stats, the 54 times, only 15 of those 54 passes were completed for touchdowns, with 7 of those going to Antonio Brown, 4 of those going to Juju Smith-Schuster, 3 went to tight end Vance McDonald, and 1 other one went to Ryan Switzer. And not only was Roethlisberger, and look, that completion percentage, and you are dealing with more times than not a compressed area of the field. So you probably are going to have. Just one thing I don't have that I'd like to be able to research is what the completion percentage was league wide on, let's say, quarterbacks who had 20 or more throws into the end zone. I don't have that number to compare, but Roethlisberger being at 27.7% wasn't great, right?
Yeah, my guess is that's on the low end. If you had the stats to look at the rest of the league.
3 of his 16 total interceptions came via such throws, and I got to be honest with you, I was able to recall those instantly before even looking. Once I saw the number was 3, I was able to recall all 3 of them very quickly. One was that one that kind of that forced one against the Falcons early in the season. The second one was the one against the Jaguars when he kind of forced the ball inside that Ramsey picked off in the end zone. And then the third one was, of course, the game against Denver.
Yeah, and that's an area of his game, of course, we've talked about needing to improve on. I wasn't worried by his interception total last year because it was down relative to the percentage of attempts, but the red zone interceptions have to get cleaned up.
Well, really, anything on the on the opposition side of the 40. I mean, he was, that's where a lot of his turnovers took place last season, and a lot of people are saying, and I was listening to Waldman from the Football Guys, and he had a guest on, and they were talking about kind of expectations for this, stats for the Steelers' offensive weapons and all this coming season. I'll try to put that link to that podcast in the this next Sunday 7 shots that I'd like to do every weekend. But they talked about trying to replace Antonio Brown's red zone touchdown receptions Well, I think if you go and you research those, I mean, and I don't want to use the word only, but I mean, Brown only had 5 red zone touchdown receptions last year, and I think Juju had the same amount, 5. So can a guy like Moncrief replace a couple of those? Can McDonald help replace one or two of those? Can a running back help replace one of those? I'm not so. Are you that concerned about losing? My biggest aspect of losing Antonio Brown is what he gives you between the 20s. More so than what you're losing from Antonio Brown in the red zone. Now, make no mistake. You look back at that play against the Saints. Being able to in that short area of field get that open real quick. I mean, they are going to miss some factor of that. But 5 overall, and I think really over the last 2 seasons, Antonio Brown has averaged 5.5 red zone touchdown receptions.
Well, a couple things. Well, that's still a really good number to average 5 or 5.5. That's still a pretty top number. But you were concerned about the red zone offense when we had this discussion the other day. If I remember correctly, you didn't think they would finish in the top 10, or you'd be around top 10 in the red zone.
I think it'll be tough for them to get close to last year's numbers.
But I remember you saying something about top 10. No, I get that. But I think you felt like they were going to really take a step back from last year.
Just overall, yeah. I mean, I think from a percentage aspect, they probably will. Just because from last year. Now, top 10, geez, I mean, what's going to be top 10?
Well, I mean, I would hope this would be a top 10 offense. I don't know exactly offhand what the number would be, but, I mean, if you're not too concerned about losing AB for the red zone stuff, then I would think that you would have believed they could be a top 10 red zone offense again.
I just don't think they're going to be able to equal last year's numbers for whatever that's worth.
Okay. Well, yeah, because that number was so high. But if they can still be top 5, which I think they can be and should be and will be, then that's what matters for me. My other point with AB is that it's not even just his red zone touchdowns. It's the attention that he still draws in the red zone that makes life easier on everybody else. Because when you're still wanting to bracket and shadow and roll that safety to AB side and pay special attention to him in the red zone, it now creates the one-on-one matchups for everybody else to win in that condensed area of the field. And that's really big. So it's not only just replacing the 5 red zone touchdowns from AB, because at a baseline numerical level you can do that, but just how defenses are going to game plan you and change how they approach you in the red zone, that might be the really difficult part. And that's why the onus is really on Randy Fichtner to be as creative as ever.
Let me ask you this. How many of the red zone touchdown passes that Roethlisberger threw last season, how many do you think came after a snap to throw time? And I don't know the answer to this. I'm going to have to look this. I'm going to have to this might be, you tell me if it'd be worth a post on this. How many came with a snap to throw time of 3 seconds or more?
Or more? And how many red zone touchdowns did he throw last year? 15. Well, it wouldn't be 15, not necessarily. Okay. I have no idea.
We know that Brown and Juju each had 5. I'm gonna test your memory here. Hold on a minute here.
Oh Lord, I got myself in trouble.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Well, you said I know Vance had 3, and you mentioned the Switzer one, which came against Tampa right before the end of the half. Yeah, Jalen Samuels against Carolina for red zone, his first touchdown.
Let me sort these real quick.
How many more came? 3 or more? I don't know, 4 or 5, perhaps. But I'm kind of just guessing.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to rattle off what they were, and you tell me if you think they were over.
Okay. I see.
Over 3 seconds. And judging by this, according to Pro Football Reference, let's see. And not necessarily throws in the end zone either. Okay, I mean these are just red zone touchdown passes. I have Roethlisberger down as 20 of those. That sounds right? Yep. 5. Let's see. 5 for Brown, 5 for Juju, 3 for Vance, 3 for Jalen Samuels. That amazes me. I don't think, and that's where I think you might take. You might not get those back this year. James Washington had the 1. I know you remember that one. Jesse had 1. James Conner had one. Ryan Switzer had one. Now, here they are, I think, in order. Roethlisberger to Juju, 2-yard touchdown.
In week 1?
Week 2, Chiefs.
That was that little tunnel screen that they ran to the left, right? Do you remember that one? So they stole that from New England. Is that the one?
Was that one? I don't know. I'm asking you.
Yeah, well, maybe this won't go as well as I hoped it would. I'm pretty sure that was under 3 seconds.
Okay, James Washington, that was over.
More. Yeah, that was way over.
The Switzer against Buccaneers, that was under, right?
Yep, that was a quick speed out.
The Falcons, short right to Antonio Brown for 9 yards in the third quarter.
I barely remember that one. I remember the deep ball touchdown. I don't remember the red zone. Maybe was the red zone one just that screen pass that he took? I don't remember.
I'm trying to remember that one myself. I remember the interception. I want to say that one was over 3 seconds. Juju, deep middle, 18 yards, Falcons.
I think that was under. That was a seam ball.
Browns, short left to Antonio Brown, 1 yard. I know you remember that one.
Yeah, that's under.
That was that quick wide receiver screen.
Yeah, maybe that's the one I'm thinking of.
I think that's the one that you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Against the Ravens, short right, Antonio Brown, 6 yards. Was that also a screen to the right side? Was that one where he beat the? I want to say that one was a quick screen under 3 seconds. Roethlisberger to James Conner for 7 yards. I'm trying to remember that one against.
Yeah,
the Ravens.
I honestly can't remember Connor's receiving touchdown. I remember Samuel's touchdowns, but I don't remember Connor's off the top of my head.
Jalen Samuels, 6 yards against the Panthers.
That was a screen pass, so I don't think it was.
Jesse James, 8 yards against the Panthers.
I want to say that was under 2.
Vance McDonald, 12 yards, Panthers.
No, that was under. That was that ball in the end zone over Kuechly.
Vance McDonald, 11 yards, Jaguars.
That might have been over.
I think that was over.
Yeah,
I think that was kind of a high ball back of the end zone, just short, a little left of the middle of the field. Jalen Samuels, 10 yards, Chargers.
Trying to think about that one. You tell me. I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that one. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that one as well too. Raiders, Juju, 1 yard touchdown. Weren't one of these a shovel pass? Didn't he have? Juju had 2 1-yard touchdowns against the.
I don't think it was a shovel. He had against Minnesota his rookie year. He had a shovel pass, his first touchdown. But I think that might have been another screenplay.
Trying to remember.
Either way, it's under 3 seconds.
Okay, McDonald, 5 yards against the Patriots.
Is that under?
I'm trying to recall that one quickly in my brain. Antonio Brown, 17 yards deep against the Patriots.
I don't know. I'm blanking on some of these.
Saints, 3 yards. Brown. Saints. Anyway, is that worth a post or no?
I mean, I don't. What would be the point if you had a lot?
Just because you talk about the value that Antonio Brown brings. What if more than half of these were over 3 yards? I mean, over 3 seconds.
I think I'd just be interested to look at how teams played AB in the red zone and if that opened other guys up. So look at non-AB red zone touchdowns, where how many of those were AB doubled or had extra attention. I'd be curious about that.
All right. Well, I didn't know we were going to go down that rabbit hole, but
so I had at least three plus 3 second red zone touchdowns from what we just half discussed.
All right. I'll try to research those.
Okay. Cool. And then bouncing off of that, PFF also had a post about the most passes thrown at or behind the line of scrimmage. So these are screen passes, quick game stuff, all that fun stuff. Over the last 3 years, and Ben, number 1 in the NFL with 379 such pass attempts. I think he led the league last year too. I can't quite remember, but so there's no surprise there. But that's whenever we talk about, fans get angry. There's not enough balance. This team's got to run the football more, and really, I don't think that's accurate or necessary, because the quick game is that run game substitute where you're running the screen game, running the RPO game, running the to the back or to the receiver, sometimes to the tight end, and so that's what Fichtner will use to replace some of the run games. So, and they functionally work like rushing attempts.
Yeah, I didn't find that. I mean, look, I had already written about kind of the king of the dink and dunk last year based on some PFF stats and all like that. So I have no issue with it. I know a lot of people get upset, and the first thing that they're going to think of, I mean, obviously, what's the first thing they're going to think of when they see a stat like that leading the league of throws behind the line of scrimmage?
The wide receiver screen.
Right. I mean, that's everybody dogs on the wide receiver screen without even knowing the numbers on it. And I went back through all of our charting and all and looked at each one of the plays. And despite that report from Pro Football Focus, the fact of the matter is that there were 41 total pass plays that included what we would like to refer to as kind of traditional wide receiver screens, such as the smoke and the bubble and the tunnel and the jailbreak and kind of the traditional kind of things. And once again, these are plays that went to wide receivers. I did not count, wide receiver screens to a running back lined out, out wide and empty. I suppose I could have, but there weren't really maybe 2 or 3 more of those anyway there. So, even 41. I mean, that's an average of what? Not even 2.5 a game.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that much. And on the 39 wide receiver screens that Roethlisberger threw in 2019, 2 others Joshua Dobbs threw, he completed 34 of them, which obviously you're going to expect a high completion rate, for 165 yards and 3 touchdowns. And, those 3 touchdowns were kind of easy, to jog the memory on as well. And, the overall thing, I think, when you look at successful play rates overall, that is the biggest number here when it comes to that. And 40 of those 41, only 18, a little bit lower. You would like to see that number at least 50%. If you're going to treat those as run game alternatives, if you will, you expect them to be what you would expect your run game success rate to be, which is 50% or higher. So they had 18 of 41. That's obviously a little bit lower than 50%. 5 of those failures were, of course, incomplete passes. So technically, of the 36 that were completed, they did have a 50% rate. But I mean, you're kind of cherry picking the stats there, if you will. So overall, people want to try to get mad at wide receiver screen plays. I think when you mix those in with the running back screen plays and all, you get what you have, and that's a run game alternative. And I don't personally believe they abuse that.
It will be interesting, though, to see how they approach it in 2019 without Antonio Brown, because AB was the guy that you just got the ball in his hands so often. If they're playing off coverage, if the corner's playing, off man, or if they're playing cover 3, you're just throwing the quick screen to AB. And sometimes it wouldn't even be a design play. It would just be a sight adjustment from Ben giving AB a signal to grabbing the face mask or whatever and just throwing hot. No one else knows what's going on and just letting AB win one-on-one. So without him, without having a guy quite like AB, Deontay Johnson has a similar mold, but he's not going to function in the same way, not nearly as strong. It will be interesting to see kind of how they approach that, because their best screen guy, which was their best receiver, is no longer with the team.
Well, here's the thing. We saw Deontay Johnson during his time at Toledo, do a fairly good job on those quick screens. So
yeah, but he's not. He can work there, but he's not strong, and that's my worry. He's not breaking tackles. That's my concern.
He's made some people miss there. I don't know what tape you watching. I mean,
he's making people miss, but it's going to be a lot harder. We're not in the MAC anymore. I mean, no disrespect to the MAC, but we're not there, and you're going to have to make some guys miss or bounce off guys. I mean, how did AB win? Because those plays, he was so strong. I mean, he's an insanely strong dude, and Johnson's not that guy, so it's going to be harder for him to win in those moments.
I tell you, some of those broken ankles that Johnson dished out would have broken ankles in the NFL, I think, on a few of those. I mean, I'm just saying, don't discount him completely when it comes to once he starts getting. And look, you're not going to do this 4 times a game anyway,
right?
But I think as the season progresses, he is a guy that you can get involved in your screen game some.
You can, like I said, he's probably the best guy they have right now. I mean, in terms of that specific skill set, but he's got things he's got to work on to become better at it too, and getting stronger to be able to break tackles and improve that yak is going to be his biggest key.
All right. What else when it comes to behind the line, screens and all like that?
Well, I mean, obviously, if you've watched this team, you're not surprised by it. But it's also just a product of how often Ben is throwing the football. The quarterbacks with just more attempts in general have more attempts behind the line of scrimmage. And I looked up the numbers over the same last 3 years. Ben tied for the second most attempts in the NFL, 1,745. It's tied with Eli Manning on the nose. Kirk Cousins has 7 more in first place. And Kirk Cousins was not in the top 10 on that behind the line list. So they're going deep in Washington and Minnesota, apparently.
Yep. I mean, look, this is a guy that, and look, Ben's still going to take his shots deep, so don't get caught up in the behind the line throws.
Yeah. I mean, Ben's just throwing the football so much, he's going to lead a lot of these categories because just the volume is there. Anything else, Dave, you want to talk about with Ben and that stuff?
No, I think that's got it there.
All right, Dave, we're going to talk about the linebackers here in a moment, but before we do that, I wanted to do a quick ad read about our friends over at Robinhood. So, Dave.
Absolutely. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks. I've used it now for several years. You can buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all of your profits. Plus, there's no account minimum deposit needed to get started with Robinhood, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy-to-understand charts and market data and place a trade in just 4 taps on your smartphone. You can also view stock collections, such as 100 most popular. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movement so you never miss a right moment to invest. Robinhood now is giving listeners of the Terrible Podcast a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help build your portfolio. To receive this offer from Robinhood, go to Steelers.robinhood.com to sign up, and once you do, you can use the app to get started there. And I have used this now for I think going on 4 years. I know I had it long before I moved out to Vegas. I use it at least once or twice a week. It's that easy to use, and I think people will not be disappointed if they give it a try. So shout out to Robinhood for continuing to be a sponsor of the Terrible Podcast. And once again, go to Steelers.robinhood.com to sign up.
All right, Dave, let's jump to the linebackers here to finish up the show, and then, of course, we'll do some reader emails at the end. We only have a couple episodes left before camp, so we are going to kind of lump all the linebackers, outside and inside, together, so a lot of players to get through. We'll start with the outside guys. Let's go with the starters briefly. TJ Watt, Bud Dupree, they're kind of in different points of their career. Watt ascending, Dupree in this weird gray area where it's a big year for him, but, his future is very much in doubt with this team. But I've said it before, I think Watt has the potential to become a 15-sack player, and Dupree, I'm not trying to defend him because, like I said, I have no expectation for Dupree this year, but I just want to see him healthy through a full season to get the best idea of who Bud Dupree is.
Yeah, you obviously would like to see Watt progress a little bit to that next level, to elite level, if you will. When it comes to pass rusher, with those counters and all. I mean, you'd like to see some quicker sacks if possible. Not that that's the end-all, do-all. Make no mistake about it, his 6 forced fumbles, that'll be hard to duplicate. But, I mean, if anybody on this team can, it's him. And just hope that the Steelers come up with more of those loose footballs here. I'm not worried about Watt one bit. Dupree. Look, Dupree has had his moments where he's been able to provide pressures, but sometimes he's winning against guys that you would expect him to win against, like to see these two combined. You really would like to see, 20 or more sacks. 20 20 pressures each, I think, at least, if not more, when it comes to theirs. So, I think obviously Dupree is the biggest question mark, but man, they're paying him that $9 million because they have faith in him. This will be his second full season working on the right side. We see all the videos of him once again working on his pass rush stuff. I just personally view him as a guy that's already hit his ceiling. I know you've been a big proponent of, can we finally see him healthy for a season? So, we'll see. I have high expectations overall if those two guys can stay healthy. And once again, those high expectations are led by Watt. And I'm with you. I mean, look, he does have the ability to hit that 15 number, I think. But, I mean, anything 10 or more, I think I'd be happy with.
The light really came on those last 5 or 6 weeks last season for DJ Watt, and I think if he can do what he did over that span for an entire 16-game season, you're talking about top 5 guy in sacks, and he was 7th last year, so 5 isn't a far cry from that. With Dupree, I think it was a little bit of the having faith in Dupree to turn it around. I think it was also just a lack of options that this team had that kind of really compelled them to make that move, because if they didn't, they're playing it outside linebacker was pretty murky if they didn't have that option on Dupree.
Well, I tell you, moving forward with the backups at that position, I mean, what is Anthony Chickillo?
He is what he is. That's a guy that's hit a ceiling. He's versatile. You trust him. He's going to play within the scheme. He's not going to kill you, but he's a 3-sack maximum kind of guy and a very good and core special teamer. Now,
Adeniyi, we're really going to learn a lot about him in the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, dropping into coverage, playing special teams, those are going to be big elements of his game, and then just continued progression as a pass rusher. I'm very confident he can play well on defense in terms of setting a physical edge and getting after the quarterback. But when you're that backup, you're that number 3, you're that number 4, you got to be a guy that can become dominant on special teams, and that's going to be really critical for him, especially in a draft class where you've drafted linebackers both inside and out who really are going to focus on special teams in Sutton Smith and Gilbert III.
All right, obviously the other name people are going to want us to talk about when we talk about the outside linebackers is Sutton Smith, the rookie out of Northern Illinois. I don't know why people still think I'm down. I'm somehow down on this kid. I just tried to call the spade a spade here. He had, you go back and you look at his college sacks. They were impressive from the aspect of a speed and a one signature move. Aspect there. Will he be able to do that at the NFL level? Will he be able to stand up against these bigger, more accomplished tackles at the NFL level when it comes to stopping a run? I have my doubts. I mean, you look at the Senior Bowl and what he was and wasn't able to accomplish there, and I think you get a little bit better idea. Make no mistake about it, though. He is going to be a fun player to watch, and it wouldn't be out of the surprise to see him beat some furniture movers around the edge, right, during the preseason?
Yeah, I think consistency will be key for him, but I think he can make some splash plays. Doing that down-to-down, though, is going to be the biggest key for him, and there's a train coming, so you talk about the rest.
Boy, that is a loud train there. Two-hand swipe. I mean, that shows up on the field quite a bit with him. He tries to use that two-hand swipe. He tries to win with his speed from the outside. Obviously, he's not a speed to power kind of guy. Anytime you see him try to counter inside, really not a lot of success there. Now, he can sometimes win with the quickness to the inside there. If you're going to try to stunt him, though, from the outside and kind of run those twists or whatnot, your success is probably going to be very, very limited in that field. Make no mistake, he's going to have to win a spot on this 53-man roster by probably being a four or a core 4-team special teams guy, and probably going to see him a little bit at fullback and yada yada. But look, you should not be hoping to see Sutton Smith much of any on defense throughout the 2019 season.
Yeah, if he's on the field, something's gone terribly, terribly wrong.
Anybody else, Jay? Anybody else you're excited to see maybe from a practice squad aspect when it comes to outside linebackers?
Yeah, JT Jones was interesting in Atlanta last year, made a little bit of noise. That's it for the outside linebackers, right? I'm not missing anybody. Am I?
Tuzar Skipper.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking he was inside for some reason. Yeah, tryout guy that made the team, played with a day at Toledo. So, that'll be interesting, but don't know much about him. So, we'll see what he can do. Just getting reps from that spot's going to be tough to do.
All right, inside.
Yeah, it goes with Devin Bush. That's where that conversation is going to start about how he looks, and obviously they want to play him as soon as possible and maximize his snap count. You hope that he can just continue what he did in the spring and from those reports and pick up this defense from a communication standpoint, and then we'll just monitor the rotation between Barrett and Bush and Vince Williams. I expect in camp the first week or two that we'll see all three guys mixing and matching with the first team. I mean, that's kind of my expectation for how this thing's going to start.
Yeah, I think you're going to see mix and match as well to some degree, but I really like the chances of Devin Bush, playing 90% of the snaps, I think, in week one. Alex, I mean, wow. the more and more, we hear about him, and the closer we get to all this, I really think there's a chance that this guy's going to be on the field quite a bit right from week one.
So you're assuming he's going to take the defensive communication role. I think that's a tall task against Tom Brady week one. I'd be a little hesitant about that.
I think there's a decent chance of it. I mean, I really think they're going to try to, maybe 90%'s a little bit generous there, but I really think they're going to try to get him on the field quite a bit here.
I do think
right from the get-go.
I do think week one, the first snap's going to be Devin Bush and Vince Williams, and I know a lot can change from now until then, but I think that's how it's going to go. But I do think Vince is going to probably play as much, if not more. It's tough. It's tough. I mean, you got Barron. I think it's kind of that middle ground. I just think having Bush being the guy week one in Foxborough against Tom Brady is asking for some trouble.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, look, if Devin Bush wants a legitimate shot to win, defensive rookie of the year, he's going to have to be on the field week one.
And he will be on the field
week one.
Yeah. So where do you see Mark Barron's role if that's your assumption that Bush is going to be 90% right out of the gate?
I think more of a 50% 50% snap player. I think you use him in some dime situations, but potentially some instances on the field at the same time with Devin Bush. I mean, look, we're going to learn, I think, a lot more when you start giving these reports, from training camp when it comes to what you're seeing there. Look, Vince Williams obviously knows what's going on there. He's one of the three that has the best grasp of the defense. And communication and all like that. Can Devin Bush rip that away from him sooner rather than later? We'll see.
Yeah, I think he can do it. I just don't know right away. I mean, again, I think that I don't want to go in with a preconceived notion, but I really feel like guys are going to move around. I mean, they did that last year even with Vince and Matakevich and Bostic, where they were mixing and matching. And so I think, one day we'll see Vince and Bush get work with the ones. The next day it'll be, Barron and Vince, and then Barron and Bush. I mean, I just think you're going to see guys playing all over the place just to get a feel of what guys can and can't do. You got two new faces and Barron and Bush, and then Vince, who can kind of do whatever you need them to. So I think it's going to be kind of messy and muddy during the preseason of trying to evaluate who's doing what and who's playing where.
So you don't think Bush is going to play, 60%, at least 60% of snaps week one?
I just don't think he's going to be the defensive communicator. I don't think he's the guy you went out there. Like when they're in dime, is Devin Bush going to be the lone linebacker on the field? That's a tough sell just because he's the communicator, and then your first game ever is to go against some of the greatest game planners and schemers of all time, and you're doing that on the road. That makes me nervous. Now maybe he has a great camp and you feel comfortable and trust him. That's fine, but there's a reason why they played Vince Williams over LJ Fort last year, and they still won that game because Tomlin talked about the importance of communication and being on the same page. And so to have Bush do that right away it makes me nervous. Now maybe Barron's a good middle ground because he's a better athlete than Vince, and he's a veteran guy who could maybe handle that stuff. But I don't know. It's tough to make me think that Bush is 90% in week one.
Just because they did doesn't mean it was the right decision.
In regards to what?
Playing less of LJ Fort.
Well, in that particular game, I thought it was the right decision. The defense played well and they won the game. So do you think that was the wrong decision?
No, I'm just saying, just because, of decision. I mean, look, there were times I thought L.J. Fort should have played more.
Well, yeah, I'm not talking about Fort as a whole. Of course, Fort should have played more. I mean, I don't know why it took him so long to get him in the lineup. But for that game specifically, and even if you disagree with it, Tomlin told you why Vince played. They went with a less athletic guy to have the communication out there. And I think they could do the same in Week 1 this year.
All right, we're getting caught way too far up in the speculation part of the part of it. Let's look at the position group as far as talent goes. I understand you want to make a big deal of the snap counts and all, but I think we're losing focus here. We need to look at talent top to bottom.
Yeah. I mean, you agree that talent is a world better than last year, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, Bostic, and I mean, from top to bottom, yeah. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, you went out there and addressed the athleticism and the speed and the sideline to sideline, the stuff that you need in today's NFL. Yeah. So just merely swapping, if you were to only swap Bostic from Bush, hell yeah. If that was your lone change. Now, is Barron an upgrade from Fort? I think so.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say. Yep, I just think you got guys that are more scheme versatile, more athletic, and Bush obviously hopefully becomes your big playmaker because this defense is still looking for that bona fide playmaker. It was Shazier, it was Troy, looking for that dude you can count on to make that big kind of play, and Bush can hopefully become that guy.
Now the interesting thing is what's going to go on at the bottom of that depth chart. I mean, realistically, are they going to carry 10 in total? 10 linebackers in total. You wouldn't think it'd be higher than 10, right? I mean, they're not going to keep 11, right?
Yeah, 10's the max, and it might just depend on that last special team spot, and based on what you're doing in the secondary, might depend on influence how many linebackers you carry. I
mean, if a guy like a Denier can show you that he can play special teams, that really lessens the chance, I think, even more of keeping 10. Especially if Sutton Smith ends up being one of your whatever. Yeah. So, I mean, you're looking at potentially 5 outside linebackers and 4 inside linebackers. And I've always thought Dirty Red has been overrated as a defensive player from day one. But make no mistake about it, that guy can get downfield and make some special teams tackles for you. So he's going to be hard, to get off this 53-man roster. Danny Smith's going to be pounding the table for him once again, I think. Look, you're not going to ask Mark Barron to play special teams, right? More than likely at his age. It's just something that you just don't see them do. Obviously, if Devin Bush is going to be your week 1 guy, you're not going to have him out there on special teams. Bud, TJ, how much do you want Vincent Williams playing special teams moving forward on this unit as well, too? You're going to need some special teams guys, and Sutton Smith could be one of those guys. Is Tyler Matakevich going to be another one of those guys? I think there's a good chance of that. And I know a lot of people are going to say, and probably from here on out, we're going to hear, you can't cut Ulysses Gilbert III because he never clear waivers. That's BS. Okay? Yeah. Ulysses Gilbert III, in order to make this 53-man roster, is going to have to prove to be a better special teams player than Tyler Matakevich. I don't think he's going to be able to do that where I sit right now.
No, I don't think any of the rookies will. I think Gilbert and Sutton Smith are going to be fighting for one spot. The other one's going to go to the practice squad. I don't want to cut Dirty Red just because he's that good of a special teams player. I do think they have a lot of options, though. I think maybe Vince could go back to some special teams if he has a pretty big reduction in defensive snaps. I think even Mark Barron could play special teams. I don't know exactly what his background is recently, but Fat Arthur Mote's played special teams in his last couple of years with the Steelers, so I think Barron is capable of it. I do think you have options there, but Matakevich is your core guy. So in terms of the backups, I'm looking at outside linebacker, probably going to go Chick, Adeyene, Sutton Smith. At inside linebacker, you got your big 3, and then I think Dirty Red becomes your fourth inside linebacker. That's kind of the way I'm framing it right now.
Yeah, I view them keeping 9 and really Matakevich being the number 4 inside linebacker and Sutton Smith being the number 5 outside linebacker is kind of where I stand right now.
Same here. And then in terms of practice squad guys, you got Tegray Scales and Robert Spillane, but those guys are it's going to be tough to get snaps in general because everything's going to be so focused on the top 3.
you would hope that a guy like Gilbert shows you enough to warrant keeping on the practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, unless he really falls flat in his face. I mean, it's 6-round pick. Those guys aren't guaranteed to make the practice squad. But my expectation right now is that one of Sutton Smith and Gilbert III will make the 53, and the other goes to the practice squad. And I think Sutton Smith's going to beat out Gilbert because he's a little more versatile. I think he's be a little better on special teams.
Do we expect one of each outside and inside to make the practice squad? I mean, obviously, if you're only going to keep 4 inside, you're probably going to have a 5th
Right.
On the practice squad. If you have 5, if Sutton Smith's your number 5 outside linebacker, along with Chicolo and Adeniyi, are you going to keep another on the practice squad?
Yeah, you might not. I don't think you have to. It's just going to be merit based. Is there someone talented enough? Does a JT Jones pop or not? I think it's a talent warranted.
Top to bottom, a lot better unit than last year. Outside and inside combined.
Well, I think outside is going to be generally the same, though I think with Watt's progression it'll get better, and then a Day playing a healthy full year hopefully will be nice. Inside though, I think is the obvious upgrade. Just you were so limited last year, and I think you might play less time defense this year than last year when you have more athletic linebackers that you want to get on the field. You played so much dime last year because you didn't have an inside linebacker, so you wanted to get away with just having one inside linebacker on the field. Now you probably want to have 2 on the field a lot of the time, so you might play less time. So that's going to help out, I think, as well.
Let's just keep all these guys healthy right now.
Yeah, but you do have good depth because, if someone goes down between Bush and Vince and Barron, you're not freaking out. You're saying, okay, we got 2 now, and the plan doesn't change. So that provides some comfort. I
think if Bush stays healthy all of training camp, boy, he is fun to watch do some of these workouts. I know it's workout in shorts and all, but he seems heading, pulling the sleigh. He's always the first one to finish, and little things like that, working on the beach and all like that. He has been exciting to watch train during the off season, and he's not shy about putting those videos out there either.
Yeah,
I'm gonna predict he passes his conditioning test.
I think that's safe to say. I do agree. I think he's gonna play a lot. I think he's gonna play a lot right away. I just don't know if he's gonna be the guy right away. But I think, like I said, week 1, New England, first snap of the game, I think it's gonna be Devin Bush and Vince Williams on the field.
All right, we beat that position group up top to bottom there.
Let's get to some reader emails here to close out the show.
All right, let's see what we have here from Jim Peller. Hi, Dave and Alex. I love listening to the show while this Berg native is on the road here in SoCal. My question is, how does the salary cap come into play when hiring coaches and office staff? Is there some limit to the number of employees or teams can hire as many folks as they like? Look, I think it's just, it does not. The coaches and coaches' salaries do not play into the salary cap. So as far as there being a limit as far as number of employees, I'm not aware of one when it comes to that. I know the Steelers probably tend to have more of a smaller knit group, right, Alex, when it comes to total numbers on coaching staff, but no, none of that plays into any of that. I think it's really at a team's discretion. How much do you want to spend on your coaches? Do you want a large group of coaches, or do you want a small group of coaches? So no, none of that has any bearing on the salary cap whatsoever.
Yeah, that's basically your pockets of the owner, how deep your pockets are.
All right, Ted Webb, and look, these owners, I mean, they shouldn't split hairs on coaches' salaries.
Tell that to Cincinnati and Mike Brown.
Yeah, Mike. Ted Webb writes in, always wonder how many times do you and Alex and your team rewatch the games before getting ready for the next one? I know you guys count snaps and plays. Just wondering how many times you guys rewatch the games during the regular season. Man, I rewatch between TV and all 22 at least 5 times.
Yeah. I mean, I just end up rewatching it naturally through the course of work, watching specific plays or I go through the game on all 22 and I watch each play probably multiple times. But then when I chart, I'm casually watching it, so I don't know the number, and I don't know if I watch it the same way you watch it. But I mean, yeah, we just go back and watch it a ton.
And he says before getting ready for the next one. Now, in total, by the time the next season rolls around, I've probably watched each game 20 times.
Dang. Do you learn something different from the second time?
I actually sometimes I do. Well, look, my key thing is initially before that next week is I try to memorize the sequence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I try to remember. I try to sit there and where I can rattle off every play what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that usually takes me 3 to 4 times through. Once I get the memorization down, and obviously, in the meantime, I'm trying to who did right, who did wrong, kind of thing, and between cutting up plays for Matthew and whoever, you have extra times in there. But I mean, here's the beauty about Chromecast is, this thing runs on my big TV in here all day long. So,
that's nice.
I'm watching. Whether I'm watching it consciously or subconsciously, I'm watching it,
Mm-hmm.
And I can pick up right in the middle of games and say, okay, well, here comes this,
Right.
and all like that. So usually, but like I said, in between the game playing, in between the next week's game, I probably have watched it at a minimum 5 times.
Yeah. Gotcha. Cool.
He says you don't have to read this on the podcast, but just thought it was a tidbit. He was at the Chantilly, Virginia autograph signing where the Steelers equipment guy, and they sell game used and worn stuff at the event, and the equipment guy was telling him that Ben is not a fan of the 100th anniversary footballs that they will be using this year. He's not a fan of the big logo on the football, doesn't like how it feels. So they may be asking league if this is mandatory to use. What, Ben looking for some sort of excuse?
Well, quarterbacks are really particular about that
sure.
stuff, so I can see that. Yeah.
I mean, I guess that paint can make it a little bit slippery,
Mm-hmm.
If you don't get to rough them up. All right, Ted, we'll keep an eye on that. We appreciate the tidbit when it comes to that. Let's say Kane22 writes in. Hi, Dave. I've heard you talk about how you became a Steeler fan, but I don't think I've ever heard you talk about how the Steeler Depot came to be. Just curious. I have no idea what's involved. Putting something together like that. Definitely a great site. Can't wait till the podcast goes back to 3 days a week. Alex is one millennial I actually like.
Hey.
Hope he sticks around for a long time. I've told this story before. I mean, look, it initially started off kind of as a merchandise kind of affiliate, site. I've always been attracted to the internet since its inception and how it works. I self-taught myself HTML way back in the late 90s, I think, and have always been kind of attracted to computers. And I mean, I had a TRS-80, way back as a kid. My dad tried to circumvent the drug use by throwing computers at me. I didn't stick to it like I should have. In the early ages, and in the later ages, I got kind of once the internet came into vogue and all like that, I kind of became attracted to it more. As I mentioned, Steelers Depot originally kind of was a merchandise affiliate link kind of site, and the more I got learned about how the internet works and blogging came into vogue, and I just got more and more into it. And then I said it'd be kind of neat to get kind of into that aspect of it, and it really kind of evolved. I think really, I mean, when did Steelers Depot kind of make the turn from affiliate to blogging site? I don't know, what was it, about 2010 or so, Alex? I forget exactly. And even then it didn't, it wasn't until I started knowing and realizing, harnessing the power of it and all, and how really anybody with a computer could make an impact, on the internet. That's really kind of when it took off. And me, when I don't do anything half-ass. When I go into something, I go 90 to nothing, and that's sort of how it came about there.
Yeah, and still going really strong. So just looking to
how many years? You're coming up on an anniversary here yourself, right?
Yeah, it's 2013 or 2014. I always forget which, but August, sometime early next month will be 6 or 7 years, 5 or 6 years, whatever it is. Yeah.
And next month or this end of this month or when was
August. I think August 5th or 14th. One of those dates, sometime early mid-August. I'll have to check.
All right, Mark Chapman writes in, just an idea. How about getting Pittsburgh Dad on your podcast in these weeks leading up to training camp when things are slow? Love you guys. I suppose that's an option. We're this close now, and we're going to have plenty to talk about between now and the start of training camp. And look, once that happens, then we'll have the special edition podcast. We won't have enough time in podcast to try to keep those things at 30 minutes there every night there. So maybe that's something we'll look at next season there. Let's see, one last one. Owen Harrison writes in. My name is Owen Harrison. I'm a big fan of podcasts. Following the Steelers here in Ireland is tough to get in-depth news and analysis, so the podcast is brilliant for keeping up to date. As a former rugby player and coach, one thing that stands out to me is the overall how poor Did we already hit this or no? No, I
don't think so.
How poor tackling techniques in the NFL, specifically outside of the scrimmage line. The amount of missed or ineffective tackles, I see the game simply wouldn't be acceptable on a rugby pitch at the highest level. With CTE fears and rule changes, I would have expected to see change in attitude, but across the league, it still seems that players are focusing on highlight reel rather than completing an effective tackle. The lack of use of the shoulder and focus for players to launch into a tackle eyes down head first seems illogical to me. Oh, you ought to probably be on the staff here. Look, he goes on to say, I noticed Seahawks have used the rugby coaches and techniques, but just wondering if the Steelers have used outside influences on tackling or other areas to assist them. I am aware former rugby internationals such as Ireland's Roger Wilson setting up tackle-specific schools in the U.S., in Texas, but seems to be more junior level. Keep up the good work, helping international fans such as myself keep informed on Steeler news and intricacies of football. Look, you see them use these rubber tires and try to do the whole, grab and roll things. You see them use these these motorized tackling dummies. The CBA limits you as far as total practice time, right? I think you have to decide where you want to dedicate your time the most.
Yeah, that's a really big question. It's a systemic problem. I think that you can trace those issues back to youth coaching and high school coaching, and you just have enough good coaches who teach that stuff properly from an early age. And if you don't, and often it doesn't happen, you stick with those bad habits, and it's harder to change that once you're in the NFL, and that's how guys played. And like you said, there's less time to teach, and you just got to kind of go. So it's an important question. I was going to mention Seattle and Pete Carroll and the way they kind of teach tackling, but I know that the email already did. But I wish I had a better answer for you. I think that it's a deep-seated issue that goes beyond just the NFL. I think you have to look at the youth and the high school levels, and if you teach good habits there, those guys that eventually make it to the NFL, they'll have good habits. So I think that it's a big problem that's across all of football, not just the NFL.
And probably you're going to keep a guy with more athleticism than you are a better form tackler, right?
Yeah.
Athleticism is probably going to always win out over technique.
Mm-hmm.
You would think with all with the push that they're trying to make at the youth level, and obviously from a safety standpoint, with all the emphasis and supposed money the league is putting into youth football and teaching good habits, maybe in a few more years it will surface at the NFL level, but you hate to see guys not seeing what they hit. And I think this is going to be forever something that we're talking about. Why can't tackling technique in the NFL be better?
Yep.
Some good input from you there, Owen, and I wish I had the proper answer to you, to give you, but I don't. Other than that, teams are limited with the amount of time they can concentrate on that stuff. Do players need to take it upon themselves to maybe get together more in the off season and work on those things? I suppose you could make a case for that, but there's only so many hours, that the CBA allows you to work on during practice, and I'm willing to bet tackling's down at the bottom of that list.
Yep, and just the teams tackle less in camp because they don't want guys to get hurt. So they just tackle less. You practice it less. You can't do it much during the year. You get one or two padded practices during a year, regular season. So it's just taught less, done less, and so guys form bad habits.
All right, I think we got the bulk on there. Did I get one here? Gregory Simmons sent along his 53-man roster projection. A little bit too long to go over that and all, but we appreciate all the emails that we get and all. We will be back on Friday, Alex and I. We'll have another position group to preview. I'm sure we'll have a lot more things to talk about between now and then. Who knows? I think coming up on time to do roster predictions again, so maybe by then, or at least by the start of training camp, we'll each have another one to go over as well. I don't think too much is going to change, though, from what we already have out there from several weeks ago, but we'll see. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. You can follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you want to donate to the site and the cause, you can do so. In fact, we got one from Kevin Jessup here. Thank you, Kevin, for the recent donation. Go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit donate upper right navigational bar, and that'll take you to PayPal, where you can donate securely. Also, if you want an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Upper right navigational bar, and for a one-time $25 charge for 1 calendar year, you can have an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com as well. Until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.